Ken is talking today as a critic. It's as a critic that I sort of first came to Ken, knew him as a critic, before I knew his poems at all. Ken at Stanford cut a very big figure as a critic, and over the years, he's somebody that I always sees an opportunity to go and talk to, and I always learn from. And I think about what is it that draws me back to Ken besides being a pleasant person to spend time with. Wordsworth refers in the preface to the grand elementary principle of pleasure, which is, I think, something we should carve in stone over the English department, because literature, professional literary studies, has pretty much lost sight of that, I think. And one of the things that I think can be said about Ken as a critic is that he is after pleasure and sees the sense in which pleasure is elementary to the experience of reading poetry and reading literature more generally. His tastes go beyond poetry, much further than my own do, and also that he's able to find different pleasures in all kinds of weird books. And he's turned me on to a lot of books I never would have found otherwise, and that's a great pleasure. So, as a critic, Ken's somebody who is surprising, has surprises, and they're always surprises, not telling you what's wrong with something you read, which is easier than telling you what's actually great about some book that you didn't properly appreciate or that you were ignorant of. That's a great thing in a critic, and Ken has that and has always had that. So I look forward to our talk today. The darkness surrounds us, the power of innuendo. Ken.
Thank you, Bob. Well, I don't know if I cut a big swath at Stanford or not. I was just telling my daughter this morning at Stanford, I'm tending to say, I'm big in Chicago, because I sound so good when I come to Chicago and people introduce me, so it's nice to do this. The power of innuendo, darkness surrounds us. I saw Lester Maddox on the TV last night. No, I saw Val Kilmer on Conan O'Brien last night, and Conan O'Brien asked him if his current role was the first gay part he'd ever played, and he said, "Well, yes, unless you count Top Gun." Now, that's the power of innuendo. Sometimes innuendo is a matter of timing. William Carlos Williams is the thoughtful lover, advises, "She loves you," she says, "Believe it tomorrow." But today, the particulars of poetry, that difficult art, require your whole attention. As Jonathan Williams reminds us in his little rebus, innuendo depends acumen. Fox plus razor equals the eye. Get sharp or you're dead. In legal language, innuendo was a small thing inserted into the body of a text followed by an explanation. Is the mic on? A small, anyway. That is, to wit. Or, that is, as in Ben Jonson's epigram to the reader. Prithee take care, that takes my book in hand, to read it well, that is, to understand. More broadly, it is a nod, a hint, often negative or sexual, but not always, provoking the reader to fill in the insinuation without the explanation. We can think of it as an unspoken compact. We may think of it as reading. A beautiful example is Maxwell Anderson's Horatian collaboration with Kurt Weill, September Song. Oh, it's a long, long time from May to December. I'm not going to sing it. But the days grow short when you reach September. When the autumn weather turns the leaves to flame, one hasn't got time for the waiting game. Oh, the days dwindle down to a precious few. September, November. And these few precious days I'll spend with you. These precious days I'll spend with you. When we come to the drawn-out short line, September, November, we may ask, what happened to October? Exactly. Where did October go? I've loved that song since I was a boy, too young to know what it meant, unless Catherine Ann Porter is right, that we are born knowing death. The darkness surrounds us. Mortality itself is often the insinuator, as in Guy Davenport's translation of a fragment that time has left us from Archilochus. In copulating, one discovers that, okay, well, what? We might modernize it, screwing, well, you know. Or as Jonathan Williams, carrying the Greek anthology into the hills of North Carolina, has it, Justine Poole always says, fucking is fine as far as it goes. Alas, not all our innuendos will be sexual. I'm thinking of something like the implication or suggestion or even the surround of a poem. Perhaps our guide should be George Clinton, Dr. Funkenstein, heart and soul of the P-Funk, who says of his latest album, it'll have some innuendos and some out-uendos. I'll leave it to you to find the out-uendos. We know that inferences from classical fragments lie at the heart of the modernisms nurtured in Chicago by Harriet Monroe's Poetry, a magazine of verse, a great display here on campus. Anne Carson entitles her translations of Sappho with one of the fragments, if not, Winter. Isn't that nice? Itself a forceful love poem. J.D. Cunningham, a sapphist of another mood, gives life to this defiant and self-fulfilling fragment. Someone, I tell you, will remember us. Someone here today will not forget this lecture. If you write down nothing else, write that down so somebody will find it. The only complete poem, now I'm going to say there are two complete poems now. Jim Powell is a great sapphist and translator, and has told me that there's a new Sappho, a new discovered Sappho poem, a complete poem, and Jim has translated it in the PN Review, and I haven't seen it, but I plan to look at it very soon. But until then, the complete poem we had at the beginning of our lyric tradition is this cheeky instance of sly innuendo. Sappho is formally addressing Aphrodite, asking once again for help with an unresponsive girl. Beginning ceremoniously, Sappho, in Cunningham's translation, concludes with a nearly sacrilegious familiarity. She and Aphrodite will be fellow soldiers in this enterprise. At first, the ode seems simple. Sappho is asking the goddess to turn the heart of a girl who has spurned Sappho's pursuit. Aphrodite, with that charmed distance only possible for one of the lucky ones, an undying god, which is important in the poem, seems annoyed by Sappho, whom she even calls by name. But Sappho, who quotes the goddess once indirectly, once directly, makes it clear that she's saying, remember in the past when I've asked this of you and you've smiled and helped me then, please help me again now, right? This is not new for Sappho to have requested this. Now then, as Carson tells us about the particular way it's phrased, one of the many ironies of the poem as I read it is that Aphrodite promised to reverse the roles of pursued and pursuer from a shape that could be figured as one arrow pursuing another to the right, that would be your right this way, right? You call on the goddess to help, to reversing them so that they're this way. Yes, she will turn around and you've been chasing her, and I think the implication is, and maybe you'll be running away. Remember when you said, what now, Sappho? Well, say it again now. I don't care if the girl is willing or not. Bright-throned, undying Aphrodite, God's child, manipulator, hear me. Destroy not with anguish and heartbreak, lady, my spirit, but come to me here. If other times you ever my voice in the distance have heard, and leaving your father's house, have come, your golden chariots yoked, your beautiful swift sparrows dense winged, spiraling above the black earth from the heavenly ether through the middle air, and now here. You of the lucky ones with a smile on your undying face asked, what now is the matter with me? Why now do I call? What do I most wish for myself in my mad heart? Who is it I must now win over for you? Who, Sappho, is unfair to you? She who avoids will soon be seeking. Who gives back gifts will be giving hers. Who does not love will soon be in love, if unwillingly. Come once more. This hard to be dealt with anxiety loosen. What my spirit would have, let it have. Yourself, my fellow soldier. Here's Jim's version I want to read to you. But isn't that great? You know, it's like, if unwillingly. We don't care. Make her love me. I'll let you make her love you even if she doesn't want to. That's all right with me. Sappho to Aphrodite. Artfully adorned Aphrodite, deathless child of Zeus and weaver of wiles, I beg you, please don't hurt me. Don't overcome my spirit, goddess, with longing. But come here, if ever at other moments, hearing these my words from afar, you listened and responded. Leaving your father's house all golden, you came then, hitching up your chariot. Lovely sparrows drew you quickly over the dark earth, whirling on fine beating wings from the heights of heaven down through the sky, and instantly arrived. And then, O my blessed goddess, with a smile on your deathless face, you asked me what the matter was this time, what I called you for this time, what I now most wanted to happen in my raving heart. Whom this time should I persuade to lead you back again to her love? Who now, O Sappho, who wrongs you? If she please you now, she will soon pursue you. If she won't accept what you give, she'll give it. If she doesn't love you, she'll love you soon now, even unwilling. Come to me again and release me from this want past bearing. All that my heart desires to happen, make it happen, and stand beside me, goddess, my ally. Quite a poem for our tradition to start out with. I once heard a presentation arguing that Sappho shows us the antithesis of male lust, which is based on a succession of willful, transitory, unilateral conquests. And I thought, well, she did say that someone, not everyone, will remember us. The other poem we remember, a fragment but complete enough to be a whole poem in our tradition, depends upon what in physics is called a three-body problem, I guess. As in the Bill Withers song, Who is he and what is he to you? Sappho addresses a woman she loves who is sitting next to a man, observing her charm with a detachment reminiscent of Aphrodite's view of Sappho herself in the great ode. She's not jealous, but what she offers, I think, is an implicit choice. Which do you prefer? The man who can sit next to you unmoved, or me, who can't look at you without thinking of Patsy Cline's I Fall to Pieces? I know which one I'd pick. She opens with what seems praise for the man. He is on a level with deity, the man who sits over against you. One, because he's impossibly reserved, on a level with deity. Two, because he's on a level with you, lady. Sappho does not compliment him, but rather you. This is Cunningham. He is, I should say, on a level with deity, the man who sits over against you and attends to the nearby sweetness of your voice and charm of your laughter. I tell you, it frightens the quick heart in my breast. For soon as I look at you, there is no voice left to me. My tongue has been fractured. A thin fire instantly runs underneath my skin. My eyes cannot see anything, and my ears re-echo. I am in a cold sweat. A trembling seizes me all over, and pallid as range grass, I think I am almost on the point of death. A long time ago, I introduced Cunningham, and I took that range grass line and said that he had sort of brought Sappho out into Montana, where Cunningham had spent some time. And Cunningham stood up and began by saying, Sappho would have been very unhappy in Billings, Montana. Fair enough. Likewise, the subtlety of Ben Jonson comes from placing himself as an actor in his own poems, sometimes with melancholy comedy, as when he hastens to help Cupid secure his desired lady. Here he's asking on Cupid to help me with the girl. Part of the humor, a lot of the humor comes in the rhythm. Far I was from being stupid, for I ran and called on Cupid. Love, if thou wilt ever see mark of glory, come with me. Where's thy quiver? Bend thy bow. Here's a shaft, thou art too slow. Help Cupid along. And for his presumption, he loses the lady and is mocked. He takes sacrilege, even joking sacrilege, seriously. In my picture left in Scotland, Johnson shows that he can write as gracefully as anyone, but fears that the lady has gotten a look at him. And he memorably characterizes his face and body. He opens by working against a commonplace, which is usual for him. Love is not blind, as we often say, it's deaf. Let me show you, because my sound is beautiful. But here's what I look like. I now think love is rather deaf than blind, for else it could not be that she, whom I adore so much, should so slight me and cast my suit behind. I'm sure my language to her was as sweet, and every close did meet in sentence of as subtle feet as hath the youngest he that sits in shadow of Apollo's tree. Oh, but my conscious fears that fly my thoughts between, tell me that she hath seen my hundreds of gray hairs, told 47 years, read so much waste as she cannot embrace, my mountain belly and my rocky face, and all these through her eyes have stopped her ears. But who among us can miss the strength and determination of my mountain belly and my rocky face, that just might win the day despite what he says? Braden Cormack, in a discussion of this poem, said, I think he did all right. Johnson's best poem, To Heaven, is rife with innuendo of a darker sort. He is making an act of contrition. The perfect act would be, as Folk Gravel would say, to be sorry for his sins, not pain of sin. Right? He's making an act of contrition, but he is unwilling to ignore the pain of the world he was born into. And while the poem praises and loves, I believe, good and great God, it also takes the form of a complaint. Can't I even think about you without becoming melancholy? In a compact passage, he moves from the Trinity to a view of God as my judge, my witness, and my advocate. I'd like to be in that courtroom. Apparently, we have much to learn from God about stacking the court. His darkest moment comes when he tells God he does not dare wish for death. It's clear that he does. And then in two emphatic enjambments cites the authority of Paul, good Renaissance tradition. I don't want to die like Paul, holy Paul, right? Who shall free me from the body of this death? I made up my mind a long time ago. James Baldwin, black and gay, wrote in the spirit of this poem that when I appeared before the mercy seat, God would not be the only one asking the questions. To heaven. Good and great God, can I not think of thee? But it must straight my melancholy be. Is it interpreted in me disease, that laden with my sins I seek for ease? O be thou witness that the reins dost know, and hearts of all, if I be sad for show. And judge me after if I dare pretend to aught but grace or aim at other end. As thou art all, so be thou all to me, first, midst, and last, converted one and three, my faith, my hope, my love, and in this state, my judge, my witness, and my advocate. Where have I been this while exiled from thee, and whither raped now thou but stoopst to me? Dwell, dwell here still. O being everywhere, how can I doubt to find thee ever here? I know my state, both full of shame and scorn, conceived in sin and unto labor born. standing with fear and must with horror fall, and destined unto judgment after all. I feel my griefs too, and there scarce is ground upon my flesh to inflict another wound. Yet dare I not complain or wish for death with holy Paul, lest it be thought the breath of discontent, or that these prayers be for weariness of life, not love of thee. O being everywhere, how can I doubt to find thee ever here? But I do. Yet dare I not complain or wish for death with holy Paul, lest it be thought the breath of discontent. No light without shadow. William Carlos's world may be brighter than Johnson's, but he shares Johnson's concerns with delicately balanced opposites, say the interplay of recurring vegetal vigor and the end of winter grimness, and by the road to the contagious hospital, what a line to start a spring poem with. The struggle of light and darkness in the pot of flowers, the precarious persistence of the finches and to waken an old lady. This last poem is an extended innuendo that begins old age is and goes straight to a description of birds in a snowy landscape, as if to say we could talk about old age in general till the cows come home. But let me give you an example. That is, this is the innuendo of the poem. As you listen, imagine plus or minus signs above words and phrases like gaining and failing that suggest negative, positive, or negative ideas about old age, the tone guided by his lovely title. Or if that's too mechanical, and probably is, just imagine ascending and descending kind of figures as you hear words and phrases go by. And it matters what order the words occur to at the end, when tempered with a shrill piping of plenty. Could rearrange those words and it would mean something else. To waken an old lady. That's the tone of the poem. Old age is a flight of small cheeping birds skimming bare trees above a snow glaze. Gaining and failing, they are buffeted by a dark wind, but what? On harsh weed stalks the flock has rested. The snow is covered with broken seed husks, and the wind tempered with a shrill piping of plenty. Williams took pains to create, to imply. This is the school where the great Wayne Booth spent his life. To imply his readers. For what good is it to me if you can't understand it? But you got to try hard. Writers imply and readers infer, and sometimes we infer without implication. That's just the way it is. Zhukovsky's 10th Anew puts it this way. What are these songs straining at sense? You, the consequence. The consequence. That's you, me, an expanding, unforeseeable community of inference. As Robert Creeley says, but myself am system of an endlessly proliferating consequence. As poems engage us to respond to them, that's what we do, I think. The beautiful wildness of Williams comes in some of our inferences. Frank Kermode uses Kafka as a parable for interpretation. Leopards break into the temple and drink to the dregs what is in the sacrificial pitchers. This is repeated over and over again. Finally, it can be calculated in advance and it becomes part of the ceremony. Come on into my poem. Break in. Bring whatever you want. Take whatever you want. We'll make a place for you. Here's Williams's love song. I lie here thinking of you. The stain of love is upon the world. Yellow, 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 it eats into the leaves, smears with saffron the horned branches that lean heavily against a smooth purple sky. There is no light, only a honey-thick stain that drips from leaf to leaf and limb to limb, spoiling the colors of the whole world. You far off there under the wine-red selvage of the West. In the Renaissance, this would be an absence poem, with the emphasis on psychology, that is, the state of the soul that contemplates the absent lover. I've often presented this poem to good readers and asked them to comment. I'm not going to do that now because this is about me, not about you. They speak of the destructiveness of love, of the autumnal colors, late sun, and the way the psyche of the reader seems to color the world. I mentioned the Homeric joke in the last line, wine red, and explain that selvage is a border on material to keep it from unraveling. It may refer to the edge of a bedspread, which I think possible. The word may come from self plus edge, a perfect word given what the poem is about. After a time of discussion, I usually ask if anyone was thinking of semen and not saying it. And one by one, hands go up. Most students still skeptical that the poem could be about masturbation. Even today, right? First version is just 1915. Apparently doing it then. Williams always published a love song, first version 1915, with the later version. Sometimes a couple pages apart, sometimes right together. Not, I think, to show how he revised, but in some ways to teach us how to read. The two poems go together. They both ought to be together. And the earlier clarifies matters in the later poem, but also makes use of a hilarious hyperbole, I think. Moreover, it concludes with an astounding question. A love song, what have I to say to you when we shall meet? Yet I lie here thinking of you. The stain of love is upon the world. Yellow, yellow, yellow it eats into the leaves, smears with saffron the horned branches that lean heavily against a smooth purple sky. There is no light, only a honey-thick stain that drips from leaf to leaf and limb to limb, spoiling the colors of the whole world. I am alone. The weight of love has buoyed me up till my head knocks against the sky. See me. My hair is dripping with nectar. Starlings carry it on their black wings. See at last my arms and my hands are lying idle. How can I tell if I shall ever love you again as I do now? J.B. Cunningham's epigram, taken from the Greek anthology, concludes with a note of stubborn dignity but less fun. And now you're ready, who while she was here hung like a flag in a calm. Friend, though you stand, erect and eager, in your eye a tear, I will not pity you or lend a hand. Cunningham's innuendos are often proleptic, just a little ahead of us, as in this one about a man called Lip. Lip was a man who used his head. He used it when he went to bed, with his friend's wife and with his friend, with either sex at either end. A very kind of a flexible epigram, I think, in some ways. This leads to a digression. I guess this is for Chico. Some are written down and one won't be. In another poem, Cunningham echoes other texts, and sometimes the echoing of texts provides an important kind of innuendo. How to read your poem as opposed, let's say, or qualifying the text you're getting. In a 6-line poem, Cunningham has 3 or 4 appropriations of other famous texts, passages, and so on in 6 lines. Dante, in your will is our peace, right? In La sua volontà, tale esta e nostra pace, I think, something like that, huh? Becomes in whose will is our peace, right? My ghostly father, to thee I confess, the Confiteor, with some of the ghostly father references in Shakespeare as well. Cunningham is a Shakespeare scholar. Becomes not even ghostly father, but thou happiness instead of God. Thou happiness, thou ghostly father, to thee I confess. Neither in love's neither in 9 or I'll start from the beginning for that. I didn't get you to the last one. And Augustine, the soul is restless till it rest in thee. And if I rest not till I rest in thee, cold is thy grace, whose hand shall comfort me. In whose will is our peace? Thou happiness, thou ghostly promise. To thee I confess, neither in thine, nor love's, nor in that form disquiet hints at, have I yet been warm. And if I rest not till I rest in thee, cold as thy grace, whose hand shall comfort me. So, devotional texts become agnostic texts, a kind of agnostic confession. The other little digression, Cunningham has we talked last night about the philological method, how it dominated things. And Cunningham has a little poem kind of making fun of the philological method, although he used it from time to time. It's on a character named Bride. Bride loved old words and found her pleasure marred on the first night, her expectations jarred, and 30 inches short of being a yard. Now, even the math impaired can do the arithmetic and find out what the joke is, but the real joke is the bride loved old words. She was a bit of a philologist, and she understood that one of the old meanings of yard was penis. And she was looking forward to that first night and felt cheated. Only person outside the academy or in Hollywood who understood the meaning of that word, and it still amazes me, is Burr Reynolds, who, when asked to do The Longest Yard, said he thought it was going to be the Victor Mature story. He's really a smart, I don't know what they were doing at Florida State, but somehow they got him at the OED or something. And he made a comparable joke about the remake of the thing too. Well, back from the digression, huh? What interests me most about the world we infer from Williams's poems is the darkness that surrounds the minutely observed details on which so much depends. In To a Dead Journalist, the inert features of the corpse still imply, but obscurely, he's mute before his greatest scoop, his own death, which is unrealizable important. But rumors of the news, unrealizable, cling still among those silent budded features, a sort of wonder at this scoop, come now too late, beneath the lucid ripples to have found so monstrous an obscurity. It's that man who is seeing and defining is aware of the monstrousness of the undefined. A more muted darkness outside the lamp's horn lies around the contending colors in the pot of flowers, a still life that is not still. That's also part of Williams's mode, which concludes, and there, wholly dark, the pot gay with rough moss. A Papago woman explained why her tribe's songs are so short. Our songs are short because we know so much. One innuendo of Williams's Full Moon comes from knowing the difference between it and its type of poem, an alba or aubade, a song sung at dawn when lovers must part. Pound's troubadour song, Alba from Languedoc, is an example of the type. When the nightingale to his mate sings day long and night late, my love and I keep state in flower, in bower, till the watchman on the tower cry, up, you rascal, rise. I see the white light, and the night flies. Night, the time of love, is good in these songs, and the coming of day is bad. Is it Romeo and Juliet might be the whole thing be a kind of aubade in some ways. Gary Snyder's North Beach Alba, which I first read as a freshman in the Evergreen Review #2, Howell was in the same issue, softens the distinction, but it's an Alba nevertheless. And it even has a nod to George Sterling's Cool Gray City of Love. Waking half drunk in a strange pad, making it out to the cool gray San Francisco dawn. White gulls over white houses, fog down the bay, Tamalpais, a fresh green hill in the new sun, driving across the bridge in a beat-old car to work. Williams's aubade delineates his character, his own character, beautifully because he wants to hang on to the night, but he welcomes the day as fully. The opening blessed moon noon of night establishes their equality, night and day. The night is wonderful, so is the day. The poem holds together by the unmistakable force of sound. The only troublesome part is the middle, a false dawn where nothing is clear. Curious shapes awake to plague me, he says. Like they are buffeted by a dark wind, but what? Or so monstrous an obscurity. This is like no other Obad that I know. Full moon, blessed moon, noon of night, that through the dark bids love stay. Curious shapes awake to plague me. Is day near, shining girl? Yes, day, the warm, the radiant, all-fulfilling day. At this point, Williams is the great figure. Should require no comment, because I'm not going to give any. The great figure. Among the rain and lights, I saw the figure 5 in gold on a red fire truck, moving, tense, unheeded, to gong clangs, siren howls, and wheels rumbling through the dark city. Aside from the famous reworking of Williams's line, I think what influenced Creeley the most was the dark surround of Williams's poems. In a day book, Creeley says, I am writing at random, straining at particles of light in the midst of a great darkness. We all know Creeley's most famous poem, which gives me my title. I guess the surround is important. It's a poem of the 50s. The Korean War, the paranoia following the House Un-American Activities Committee, the deification of consumption of oil and steel, speed, and a mounting sense of danger. I have to say that I still miss my '55 Chevy convertible, beginning of the small block engines that became the muscle cars, favored by Peckinpah and the non-Western movies and others. It's Creeley's, Steve McQueen says to Ally McGraw in The Getaway as they shot out the back window and she's driving, punch it! You know, it's like that. That's what that was about. It's Creeley's version of the reserved, cautious portraits Hans Holbein painted of Henry VIII's court. Those ones like this. Henry Vaux says, praising thinking, though many have been harmed by speech, by thinking a few or none. Kind of a nasty little joke. Not enough people are thinking to be heard. Well, Creeley's is a little different. In our version, we're always talking. Nervous about giving ourselves away. John, I said, which was not his name. Right? Stumbling close to incoherence, neurotically drawn to violence. All I can say is, thank God those days are over. I know a man. As I said to my friend, because I am always talking, John, I said, which was not his name, the darkness surrounds us. What can we do against it, or else shall we, and why not, buy a goddamn big car? Drive, he said, for Christ's sake, look out where you're going. The last lines show the virtue of Creeley's hesitant style. He read more hesitantly early, kind of smoothed it over later, but I kind of like the early misappropriations of Williams, right? It sounds different from drive, he said, for Christ's sake, look out where you're going, to drive, he said, for Christ's sake, look out where you're going. And it's better, huh? Okay. Jack Nicholson directed a movie based on a novel by Jeremy Larner that takes its title from Creeley, Drive, he said. Larner also wrote a really very good film script, a political film called The Candidate. I have no desire to prove, or for anybody to disprove my theory that Creeley invented Jack's way of talking, but I know a man. As I said to my friend, because I am always talking, John, I said, which was not his name, the darkness surrounds us. What can we do against it, or else shall we? Why not buy a goddamn big car? Drive, he said, for Christ's sake, look out where you're going. Out you window. At this point, we may all be wondering, what's the point of all this fun? Poems work by innuendo, that's true. And we already knew that. I hope I've shown that a good deal can be implied and that the inference of these matters depends on us, our own proclivities, a love of popular music or cars of the 50s and 60s, random connections of wayward reading, Hollywood gossip, or whatever you bring. You got to bring some to get some. Among other things, our poems have implied political paranoia, the presence of unreasoning peril, comic views of ourselves, an anger at God that threatens to overwhelm our love of God, an anxiety that our private erotics may surpass the actual presence of a lover, the Homeric sense of some enveloping darkness that brightens swords and shields and even blood itself, and the joking recognition that we can call on our goddess again and again, just one more time now, for the right girl to make it all better. This is D.A. Powell. Cocktails is a title that has an innuendo to it, as you know if you read the book. My lover, my phlebotomist. I'll write about two things at once. My lover, my phlebotomist. His elastic fingers encircle my arm, psychopompous. He guides me away from my worldly woes. His prick, cutaneous, subcutaneous, intravenous, an underground passageway, I rise to meet him engorged. I wear a negligee and surgical mask. He's fat with small talk. This fog, he says, and keeping busy? I am, I say. Sometimes seems like all you want is blood. He's sheepish today. Maybe he wants to hold me to his brutal chest. Wrap me in gauze. Press his coffee breath into my mouth. Our tongues, snakes, caduceus. Then quickly, the affair is over. Out on the street, my feet are swinging. My bloody Valentine. Sweet comic Valentine. Stay. David Mamet tells about getting some advice on playing the piano from Joel Silver, who produced several of Rebecca Pidgeon's records, his wife. Leave out the third, Silver told him. We hear it anyway. Mamet applies this idea to other forms of art, including his own. Omit, we hear it anyway. Sometimes it's plot, we hear it anyway. Character, we hear it anyway. Tom Gunn believes that the ballad, which achieves mystery by various forms of omission, may be at the heart of the lyric experience. And Carson thinks that Eros links Eros to everything under the sun. Puns, symbols, philosophy, even love. Kind of a joke. For me, my phantom student is laughing here. Maybe at the heart of the lyric experience. She shows us how in the Greek fragments, Eros, bittersweet, breaks in on us, makes us see something different from ourselves, makes us aware of what we lack, what we cannot live without. Further, like philosophy in the old, now unfashionable sense, Eros, let us say the poem or lover, cannot be possessed as if it were a thing. We cannot possess Guy Davenport's poem, Medusa. I can remember my first several readings of the poem. I felt overwhelmed, unable to find my way in the welter of references, yet drawn back to it again and again by its compelling qualities, which will be apparent to you in just a minute. I looked up the references I didn't know, reviewed the ones I did, strung them together, forgot some of them, forgot all of them, and yet the poem stayed. It was a world and it was other than me. I lacked and wanted it. Gradually, it occurred to me that I was reading a poem full of innuendos, all pointing to the same thing. Let me save you some time. Let's assume the poem about a jellyfish is also about the brain, or rather, the mind. And as you hear it, each of you will make a variety of inferences about Davenport's complicated view of the mind. It's a fact of biology, anthropology, mythology, philosophy, painting, poetry. It's electric, transparent, watery, sexual, and polymorphous, not perverse. It's passionate and wild, it stings, it kills, it illuminates, and it moves through darkened seas. It's beautiful. The poem itself is an illustration of mind, because the mind can create such a thing. And as Braden Cormack, master of continual inference, once remarked, the mind can read this poem. That is, understand it. Guy Davenport, The Medusa. Is Juno of the ribbons and gelatin little more, as Lyman said to Agassiz, than organized water, Hegel's brain and a lace shawl, knit moonlight, its dome of liquid glass sealed by invisible sutures, its spore sacs disguised as eyes, alternate with eyes, testicle eye, petal-wise radiant, 6 sexes flowering in 6 eyes, fringed with pleats thin as wine down the side of a glass, stitched to the dome with cobweb. Its confetti of 40 legs hang below, mylar, orchid roots, a silver point page of Da Vinci, and the pearl and meander of rivers that eddy, curl in counter-curl like Isabella d'Este's hair. This anatomy of water, with its crystal bowl of a hat, hung with sexual eyes and optical sexes, is named Medusa by the masters of naming, Arethusa and Ariadne, ladies whose fate was in mazes. It is the Portuguese man of war, the sea nettle, the stinging jellyfish, builders with baskets of atoms in the 7 days, sticking the protozoa together, called these humps of slime, bearded with transparent fern, the electric lady, quintessential Venus, Jezebel in panoply, Hera of the tassels. This gracefulest sphere, ringed and dressed in Isolde hair, crawfish shy, improbably intricate, and by any virtuoso craftsman's word impossible, is 50 pounds of water and 4 ounces of flesh, is an electricity of convolute frills, and is transparent. You may see through it what's behind. A fish rippled as in a mirror with a warp, or coral squeezed and stretched by this lens of fat water. To copulate, it rolls cogwheel fashion around another, which in turn is rolling around another, eye looking into eye, cedar into socket. It is an hermaphrodite and can, if the press is great, mate with 6 at once, and has been known, what with the sea unsteady and itself so slick, to shoot from among its fellows 2 feet into the air. It hatches not baby Circes, but pomegranates of the ocean, which like their Titan parents are Venus and Mercury blended, headless. They are not beings, but the seeds of beings, parent, egg, and infant in one, bones of water, flesh of film. Their progeny is the ghost octopus with legs of smoke, the dozen-crotched and eyed Medusa Cyanea, fire in azure, quick to sting, of ferociousness of light in the cold dark of the seas. You feel smarter just a little bit. It is an hermaphrodite and can, if the press is great, mate with 6 at once, and has been known, what with the sea unsteady and itself so slick, to shoot from among its fellows 2 feet into the air. Even in the 60s, we never saw anything like that. Works of art attract by a resembling unlikeness, Ezra Pound wrote in I Gather the Limbs of Osiris. Here's Guy Davenport himself in an essay on Eudora Welty. The meaning of the world, said Wittgenstein, is outside the world. Events and values are distinguishable only in relation to others. A totality of events and values, the world itself requires another. Hence our recourse to symbols which serve for a sense of otherness, and our inadequate ideas of time and death, of purpose and being. Into this inadequacy, mankind introduced an imaginary order in which the elusive is made to stand still, and an order too extensive and too complex for our understanding is given limit and measure. The artist shows the world as if meaning were inherent in its particulars. We dress biological imperative in custom and ritual. The artist dresses it in analogy and finds design in accident and rhythm in casualness. That every event is unique and every essence distinct from all others rarely interests the artist, for whom event is pattern and essence melodic. My last poem will induce us all to participate in an extended innuendo, I promise. It's Marilyn Hacker's Canzone. Its trope is inviting a friend to supper. Ben Jonson's version is noteworthy for its charm. He says he'll lie in order to get his friend to come to supper, and then tells him what the lies are. I'll tell you of more and lie, so you will come. Of partridge, pheasant, woodcock, of which some may yet be there. And Godwit, if we can, gnat, rail, and ruff too. Hacker's charming and witty poem consists in 4 pentameter stanzas of 12 lines each. Each stanza repeats the same in words. Here's the order of the first stanza. Tongue, pleasure, tongue, tongue, organ, tongue, tongue, give, give, tongue, taste, taste. All right, she's going to cook a tongue for her guest. Here are the end words of the last stanza with the way they run on sometimes. Organisms, give, organ. Disorganization, taste. Organic, organ. Tongue, tonguing, organ. Pleasure, pleasure. We can infer a great deal just from these words. She's offering a good deal more than lunch. You know what I mean. She's offering a treatise on language and pleasure. It's lamentably sometimes said that in the academy, oral sex is too often talking. Marilyn Hacker's invitation offers both. Canzoni, consider the 3 functions of the tongue. Taste, speech, the telegraphy of pleasure, are not confused in any human tongue, yet sinewy and singular, the tongue accomplishes what perhaps no other organ can. Were I to speak of giving tongue, you'd think 2 things at least, and a cooked tongue sliced on a plate with caper sauce, which I give my guest for lunch, is one more. That's really pretty good. She's ahead of us. Were I to speak of giving tongue, you'd think 2 things at least. And a cooked tongue sliced on a plate with caper sauce, which I give my guest for lunch, is one more, to which she'd give the careful concentration of her tongue, twice over, to appreciate the taste, and to express it would be in good taste, a gastronomic memory the taste called to mind, and mind brought back to tongue. There is a paucity of words for taste, sweet, sour, bitter, salty. Any taste, however multiplicitous its pleasure, complex its execution. I might taste that sauce 10 times in cooking, change its taste with herbal subtleties, chromatic organ tones of clove and basil, good with organ meats, must be described with those few taste words or with metaphors. To give my version of sensations, it would give a neophyte deciding whether to give it a try. So the woman she's offering lunch to is a neophyte. And she's saying, don't make up your mind till you've tried it twice. She might develop a taste. You try things once. I think you have to give 2 chances, though, to know your mind, or give up on novelties. Your mother tongue nurtures, has the subtleties which give flavor to words, and words to flavor give the by no means subsidiary pleasure of being able to describe a pleasure and recreate it. Making words, we give the private contemplations of each organ to the others and to others, organize sensations into thoughts. Sentient organisms, we symbolize feeling, give the spectrum, that's a symbol, each sense organ perceives by analogy to others. Disorganization of the senses is an acquired taste we all acquire. As speaking beasts, it's organic to our discourse. The first organ of acknowledged communion is the tongue, tripartite diplomat, which after tonguing a less voluble expressive organ to wordless efflorescences of pleasure, offers up words to reaffirm the pleasure. A less voluble expressive organ. What an astounding poem. Thank you for the pleasure of this bright autumn afternoon between September and November.